going on, everybody? John's Record Rack, back with another episode. Corey, how are you from Just Add Vinyl? This is going to be the last time that we ever speak about the 2010s, right? This is it. We're looking forward, only moving forward. This is our conclusion to our best of decades list. We kind of wanted to coincide this with the end of the year, but didn't work out that way. But here we are, 2010 to 2019, top 20.
So. Yeah, I'm ready to do this. This is a lot of fun going through all these albums and putting this list together, revisiting as much as I could of the albums, jotting some notes down. So glad to be back talking about another decade of music, and what an awesome decade it was.
It really was. I was surprised because generally you don't, especially us older folks, don't necessarily put current albums on best of lists, right? It's always way back. But to actually put together and compile a list of the last 10 years, which doesn't even seem like that much time to me, honestly, was great. I really enjoyed the 2000s, because like you mentioned to me off camera, it really forced me to go back and either revisit stuff that I wasn't familiar with, or visit stuff I wasn't familiar with, and then revisit albums that I hadn't listened to in years. So I had a lot of fun. It was good fun.
Let's see. And a theme for me with most of these albums is we just get inundated, with streaming music. You have Amazon Music and different ways to get CDs and downloads and digital copies. I'm going through my folders. There's so many good albums, rock and metal albums and otherwise, that have come out. And I find that even my favorite albums, they would be in rotation maybe for a week, a month, maybe beginning of the year, end of the year, and then that was it. So diving into this list helped bring all those back to the surface again. And I'm going to keep doing this. It's a great way to revisit some great music.
It is, and it's also been a great way, I've noticed, to set aside, however much time you have, and just either put a CD on, listen to a digital file, or throw a record on, and just sit back and listen to the albums that we picked on the list. And it's because you have to set aside time. I didn't listen to these while I was driving in my car, because usually if I'm driving in my car for work, I'm not really paying attention, right? I really wanted to invest time into these records that we put on this list, whether I was super familiar with them or not. And it was a blast, man. It was a good way to almost force yourself, right, to listen to the music and not do other things. Because I always like to do other things, right? I put on a record and it's background music, but not for this. So there's a healthy way to listen to music.
Oh, right on. Yeah, I was totally focused listening, and even if it wasn't the whole album, I'm still going to go back and listen to all and finish up where I left off on all of these. I'm a little bit of a disadvantage because of my truck that I normally drive has the old CD player in it and a nice sound system. So my heater core went out of my truck, so I've been driving my daughter's car for months and months. And my daughter's car just has this really crappy single speaker. The CD player doesn't work, and I don't like to stream music through a single. I don't like to do it very much anyway through the cell phone. So I've been doing a lot of podcasts and stuff, but I haven't been able to play a lot of these CDs like I normally would. But that's all right. I've just been doing it with the computer here at work, or getting the records on a turntable, which is never a bad thing.
Right. I'm curious, before we run through 2010 to 2019, how many of these albums on our latest list do you own on vinyl?
I wasn't ready for this question. This isn't in the script. What are you doing? You're going completely off script here.
Not that it matters.
I think all of them, but two. I didn't, the Rainier Fog, I don't have on vinyl. all the other ones I have on vinyl except for Soundgarden's King Animal, which I had digitally, and guess what? It's on the way.
That's right. You ordered
I've
it, right?
already bought it, and it's one of those things where it seems like people are taking a long time to ship. I don't know if it's after the holidays or what, but it seems like they're taking the full 4, 5, 6 days to ship items out. But anyway, King Animal's on the way, and I regret not buying it in the record shop when I saw it.
Yeah, man. As soon as they announced that back in the day, 2012, I bought that literally on release day. And then, of course, I bought the colored vinyl special edition that Soundgarden released last year to celebrate their 35th anniversary. So it's basically the same deal, just colored vinyl. But
What
yeah,
about you? You
I
have them
own
on?
all of these on wax except for, shame on me, Deftones and Fear Factory's Gen Exus. I don't own that one, and I don't own Slash. So 3. The rest of them I have.
And I can see how you could, you have to prioritize, or I have to prioritize. I can't buy every new release that comes out.
Right.
I don't feel like I need every single on vinyl. But now that these are on our top 20, I suppose we should rectify that before our next episode.
Right. Yeah, and the ones that I don't have on vinyl, either have them on CD or, MP3 or digital download. But most of them are, wax, except for those 3. So, and then of course, I guess Tool. We don't own Tool on Fear Inoculum on wax.
Nobody owns Tool
Nobody
on
owns
vinyl.
it. This is true. All right, well, let's get into the list.
Let's rock and roll.
Do you want to do the same format that we did last time, where we just literally go through it and then give our 2 cents on each album rather than reading the whole thing at first?
Yeah, let's just get into it. Volley, you go ahead and start, and I'll hit the ball back to you with a couple comments, and we'll just go and just tear through the list.
Cool. All right. Well, 2010. I felt like 2010 was a difficult year. I don't feel like there was a ton of stuff to choose from, at least in my opinion, in 2010. So I found that to be the most difficult year. But you really pushed for this, and I listened to this album all the way through, and I see why. It's phenomenal record, and that is Slash, self-titled Slash. So I'll let you speak to this since you're more familiar with it.
Yeah, I can see why this could be a skip over album, or maybe a novelty. I mean, for lack of a better word, one of those ones that's, this is pretty nice, and move on. Or there's no such thing as a super group. It's not a super group
Right.
album, but it's definitely a super collaborative album. Slash is doing the hip hop thing here and just bringing everybody who's anybody in on these songs. But I don't feel for a second that it was just thrown together. It's, even though it's a collaboration, every track is with someone different. It's cohesive. It sounds like an album. And it's just fantastic. Ian Astbury is on it. Ozzy, Chris Cornell, Iggy Pop. I mean, the list is long, and it's great songwriting, great songs, like you said. And I think Anesthesia is one of my favorite tracks on the album. And then the opener with Ian Astbury is really good too. Was it Ghost?
Yeah, Ghost. Yeah, I'm just looking over the personnel on this album, and it's like the who's who, right, in rock and hard rock. Ozzy's on here. You mentioned Cornell. Lemmy's on here. Dave Grohl. Duff.
Lemmy, that's right. Yeah.
Kid Rock. M. Shadows from Avenged Sevenfold. Iggy Pop's on here. Alice Cooper's on here. I mean, literally, I guess this would be the very definition of a super group, right?
Yeah, the super group. And not to take away from the album, but also 2010 was what started off, or was it early? It seemed like it was early 2010, but that's when we lost Ronnie James Dio.
That's right.
That was a bad year for that, as losing him. So that was, the heavy metal world had a huge blow, that we're still trying to recuperate from.
Yeah, that's right. 2010, start off the decade with the almighty Ronnie James Dio, R.I.P. All right. Well, that was the only one we had for 2010. So 2011, we have two, Anthrax with Worship Music, Megadeth 13. Both of these records are two of my favorite, I would say, of the last 10 years, especially Worship Music. I really felt that Anthrax had kind of lost their way a little bit, after parting with John Bush. And in my opinion, Anthrax output with John Bush at the helm was a little uneven. I don't think all their records were great with him. I just always felt like they were missing something. And then to have Joey Belladonna come back for Worship Music, which is basically, them reuniting with the classic lineup, sans their lead guitarist at the time. What a comeback album for Anthrax. It was like I hadn't even thought about Anthrax, let alone gone out and purchased one of their records 10 years ago or 9 years ago now. And then when this came out, I think I heard a couple tracks on like Sirius XM Liquid Metal or something like that, and I was like, wow, Anthrax is back. So, and then 13, well, I'll let you say, go ahead, I'll let you say something on Worship Music.
No, I think you covered it really well. I wasn't expecting it, and I wasn't expecting it to be great. And 2010 was a time when I was ready to welcome thrash back, I guess.
Yep.
There's some talk about thrash revival, in journalism. So revisiting some of this pulls up thrash revival. But I think the thrash revival has been going on or rebirth of thrash has been going on and very steady with lots of great albums to fuel it, which we'll talk about in a minute. But when this came out, I was so happy. It blew me away. I loved it. Some of my friends loved it, and Joey Belladonna was back, and it was just had a whole new fresh energy. I was cranking it and getting into it. Love Scott Ian anyway. It's their first album in like 8 years. Like you said, I wasn't even thinking about Anthrax.
Right.
And then I was able to see them the next year in concert as part of the Big 3 concert. And but yeah, it's just a killer album. It was great to revisit this.
And the thing that just amazed me right off the bat was just how fresh Joey Belladonna's voice sounded. I mean, it's like it even sounded even a little bit heavier, right, with age. So it got a little deeper. Just it was phenomenal for a guy who
our production got better,
making albums for a long time, metal albums, as a singer for however many years it had been. What, since 1990? That's 20 years, and then you come back and almost not even miss a beat, in my opinion, that says something about the talent of that band.
Absolutely.
Next one is Megadeth 13. This was actually the first record with original bassist David Ellison. He came back. I think he was out of the band for about 10 years prior to him coming back and releasing this. And in between his last album and this album, unfortunately, Mustaine and Ellefson had kind of a falling out. And at that point, you're like, well, they're done. They're not going to make records anymore together. It's just going to be Dave and, hired guns. But that didn't end up happening. So we're glad that Ellefson's back. And this is another record. Megadeth is back with this record. I really felt like this was their strongest record since 94 with Euthanasia, honestly.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you go from great albums from Rust in Peace to Countdown to Euthanasia, and then it was hit and miss. Megadeth albums were hit and miss, but definitely 13 was like, hey, hello, what's this?
Right. So yeah, phenomenal album. It's funny, we have two legendary thrash bands for our two albums for that year. So
another thing I noted here, you'll see that Ted Jensen mastered the Megadeth 13. Not only that, but we've got a handful of Ted Jensen albums like the first like 1, 2, 3. There's like 4 or 5 Ted Jensen mastered albums here. He works out at Sterling in New York.
On our list
Yeah,
right now.
Megadeth 13,
Oh, that's funny.
the Deftones, and then Death Angel, and then a couple. I think one more. I was just kind of going back, looking through liner notes and looking and kind of noticed Ted Jensen. But Ted Jensen, he's like Bob Ludwig. He's like done
Right.
a million albums, but I love his production because I mean 13 is produced well, and so are some of these other ones that we'll talk about in a minute. So that's one thing that stood out to me.
Yeah, I'm just kind of looking over Ted Jensen, the producer of this album, some of his credits, and yeah, I mean he did Alice in Chains.
Yep.
The Devil Puts Dinosaurs Here, Evanescence, Death Angel, like you said. He's kind of all over the map, so it seems like he's not just, he doesn't just
not
produce
just rock,
rock or metal. So interesting. All right, well, that wraps up 2011. 2012, we have 2 records here. We have Deftones with Koino Yokan and Soundgarden King Animal. Corey, go ahead and talk about the Deftones.
When this came out, it was like Deftones were back again for me as well. Just like with Anthrax, talk about shifting gears mentally. Whoa, going from more of the thrash metal to more of the alternative metal. But
Right.
This album, the name is there's. I look it up and there's really no quite English translation for this Japanese to translate this, but it does mean something like love at first sight. They kind of go back to that what was best, what I liked best about them in the past. You think of like White Pony, maybe Around the Fur, some of those albums, and they compound these layers. They're able to use different kind of guitar recording technology. Maybe you know more about that than I do with their pedals, or maybe they're using some different tools in the computer to add different sound effects. But I mean, just the guitar layers and the melodies and the songs are just incredible. You get a little bit of shoegaze in it.
Yeah.
For me, where it's just kind of transplants you from where you're at into another place. And I never really get lost, or I never really get like shaken out of it. I think it's a really good album from beginning to end. I loved it from the first listen. I like it better than their new one, Gore. But for me, this is probably like the last really good Deftones album for me. And it's not to say that they're done, but like that and White Pony are 2 of my favorites of theirs.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned the production or the gear that they used, and don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure that this was the first time the Deftones actually didn't use your traditional amp cabinet guitar setup, right? They used Axe-Fx rigs.
That's what I was trying to remember.
Yeah, and I guess that was the first time, but what it enabled them to do, you mentioned shoegaze. Shoegaze music's all about soundscapes, right? And the Deftones were always really good at that, but when you do that with traditional instruments, right, you gotta have a lot of stuff to be able to do that and add different things in the studio. So for this record, they were able to do so much more with less gear because they literally used the Axe-Fx program system, amp modeling system, to record the whole album. So and I never thought shoegaze, but you're right. Listening to that, they definitely have some late 80s, early 90s ethereal
that's a
textures
good term,
in this record.
Yeah. And that's not for everybody. That's not for everybody in the rock and metal world, but I dig it, and I'm glad you're a Deftones fan too, so it made the list.
Yeah, I'm a huge Deftones fan. I like them quite a bit. All right, the last one for 2012, Soundgarden King Animal. What can I say here? This was, Soundgarden had basically not existed. They broke up in 1997, end of 96, beginning of 97, after Down on the Upside was released, and they called it quits. And Cornell pretty pretty well known that he basically embarked on a solo career and also joined Audio Slave. And we kind of thought that Soundgarden, at least I did, to me, that band, the guys in Soundgarden, like once they're done, they're done. They're not going to, come back and, do the county fair, play the hits tour. I just never saw Soundgarden as that type of a band.
Yeah.
And then I'll never forget, and I'm still not on Twitter, but I'll never forget reading Chris Cornell's tweet that he sent out 2 years prior to this album being released in 2010. And it was something along the lines of, ladies and gentlemen, the Knights of the Sound Table are back. School is now in session. Something like that. And I'm like, wait a minute, Soundgarden?
Nice.
What? Back together? And then, of course, they get back together and they make a new album. And what a phenomenal comeback of an album. And you can hear the maturity in the music as well. But I'd say this is probably, I like this King Animal. I like it more than Down on the Upside, which was their last, record of the 90s. I thought this was a super strong album to come back and, with the basically the classic lineup of that band, since they had two different bass players.
I think any Soundgarden album is going to fall kind of in the one way or another in the shadow of Bad Motorfinger.
Sure.
But this kind of had that kind of charge and that energy and that like diesel fuel smokiness to it.
Yeah.
That I got from Bad Motorfinger. I kind of took it for granted. I realized I took Soundgarden for granted. I think a lot of us did. But going back and revisiting this album, I was reminded how much I listened to it when it came out.
Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, great opener, great closer. But I was like, oh yeah, that song. I'm gonna definitely when I get my truck back going, that's gonna be one of the first ones in the thumb drive and the CD player.
Yeah, I saw them on this tour, and they played at the First Bank Center in Colorado, in I guess it'd be Broomfield, but phenomenal show. For Chris Cornell to be able to still sing like that was just amazing to me. So unfortunately we won't ever get to see another Soundgarden record unless they have stuff that we don't know about. But great comeback album, and definitely belongs up there next to their best records in my opinion.
And mastered by Ted Jensen.
Really?
Yeah.
Get out of here. Oh yeah. Unbelievable. This is a running theme, Ted Jensen. Yeah, this is Ted's list.
I just caught another note too. Mike McCready does guitars on one of the tracks too. Guest appearance.
No, that's right. I forgot about that.
Got that off of Wikipedia.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, Mike McCready, of course, all those original Seattle bands are all friends.
They all network, yeah.
Yeah, but I know McCready, especially him and Chris Cornell, at least what I've heard McCready say, they were pretty close. I guess Cornell took McCready was kind of like a big brother type of thing. So, all right, that wraps up 2012. 2013, we have two. Of course, Black Sabbath 13 and Death Angel, The Dream Calls for Blood. It took me a while to get into the Black Sabbath 13. It really did. I'd say I probably had to live with that album for a year for me to get past Ozzy's super produced voice. But then after I did that and I started really listening to the music, it was there. I mean, that's the Sabbath that we know and love. That super heavy, riff after riff. I mean, there's like 5 different riffs in each song, right?
Yeah, I did. Black Sabbath 13, when it came out, it was, Ozzy's back, but you got everybody. We couldn't get Ward, but we'll take Wilk.
That's right, Brad
Wilk. Kind of interesting, but it worked. but you're right. It was and it out of the gate or out of the package, it doesn't seem like it's going to blow a lot of listeners away. So I understand the flack that it took and some of the critical reviews. But doomy, sludgy, slow, and it was Sabbath. I think one of my favorite tracks on there is "Damaged Soul."
Yeah.
I think there's a couple parts where he kind of taps into it. Reminded me of Osmosis a little bit of solo Ozzy work in there. But I love that track "Damaged Soul," and I have kept that on my playlist long since running on my what I call the fire pit playlist when the family's outside hanging out at the fire pit.
Right.
That's in the rotation there. But just it's sad to see the end. Like that's probably going to be their last album. You know, if they don't try and patch things up with Ward or figure something out there. It'd be nice to see them doing like another tour again. But like you said, the riffs are fresh and there's riffs aplenty.
There really is. I think the thing that I didn't like as much in this album as later albums is Geezer Butler didn't write all the lyrics. Ozzy had written a good portion of the lyrics for this record, and I don't think Ozzy Osbourne's a very good lyricist. That's just my personal opinion. I think some of that came out in some of the music, especially the kind of the lead track from this, God Is Dead. I think the lyrics in that are just so corny. It's like a rhyme fest. But the riffs are awesome.
Ozzy's written some really great songs or parts of really good songs, but he almost has to write 10 songs to get, like one killer, I think. And if you get too lost in focusing on the lyrics, it can definitely diminish, I think, from the music. So he's kind of go along with how great his voice sounds. Right.
And you know what, ultimately, I was happy to get a new record with one of my all-time favorite bands. Yeah, like you said, I would have loved to have seen Bill Ward in the project, because he's just a different animal. He's a different drummer than Brad Wilk, and then the guy who they ended up touring with. I'm drawing a blank on his name right now, but he was Ozzy's solo band drummer. It's just they're different players, and Sabbath didn't have the swing that they had in all of their Ozzy era records. Bill Ward is, he was by trade was a jazz drummer.
Jazz, yeah.
And you can hear that in all of Sabbath's Ozzy records in the 70s. Their music swings. That's why it's groovy. It has a groove to it. And I felt like they didn't quite have the groove in 13 that they did in the same in the 70s. But with that said, again, great record. I eventually grew to love the record. It just took a little while.
There was a track on there. I thought that the track listing, I'm trying to read my notes. I wrote pretty darn small. There's one song there. It's totally out of order. There's it's like track 8 or 9 or 6, whatever it is. The song ends with a lightning strike and this thunder rolling and rain. And I'm like, what is that doing in the middle or towards the end of the album? It should have been the last track on the album, because think about it. If Black Sabbath 13 ends up being their last album and it ends with rain,
it started with rain, right?
Right back, like, that Pink Floyd The Wall. The album ends right where it begins. So if you could end 13 with that rain and the lightning strike, probably don't do the bell, because that would be a little cheesy, but it would just bring it right back to the very first track for me. But I just thought, man, why didn't they just switch that track order around a little bit?
That's a good point. I never even thought of that. I know exactly what you're talking about too, but it would have been perfect, right? They started with rain back in 1970 and they end right in 2013.
Yeah, it would have been poetic. All right, what's next?
Next up, we have Death Angel, Dream Calls for Blood. I'll let you take this one.
Man, I tell you what, man, Death Angel in 2010's killer albums, and The Evil Divide, The Humanicide. I mean, The Dream Calls for Blood. As soon as you say that, I've got the song in my head. I think Death Angel is so underrated. And I wish that their previous albums could have made it into our top 20 list, because I don't think Ultraviolence or Act 3, I don't think it made it. They were just they were right there knocking on the door, but they just didn't quite crack the top 20. but I think they're underrated. There's a
Big
couple
time.
different books authored for metal bands or thrash bands out of the 80s, and like Death Angel is not even in the list, and it's
I
just
know.
like, what an omission. But today they're still going strong, and there's nobody more passionate. They seem to be, I haven't met the guys, but they seem to be down to earth, not pretentious at all, very talented, and they just keep driving forward. And I love their current lineup. I forget what the reform. They had the reformation, formation, the reformation, and then now going into the future with their albums. In the 2010s up to last year's album they're just amazing. I love them. I have a lot of fun listening to them. But Dream Calls for Blood, try to pick up the CD DVD combo on it. It comes with about an hour. Very well produced. Minimal, like kind of a minimally produced, but very well produced, kind of behind the scenes. You get to see Will Carroll doing his drum tracks, and kind of in the studio with their producer. It's really cool. Pick that up, or I'll send it your way and let you borrow it, or maybe you probably pull it up on YouTube. Lightning fast. It's dark. It has kind of a darker feel to it. Really heavy. Great lyrics. They also cover Heaven and Hell. They do a cover of Heaven and Hell, and it's actually a pretty nice. Nothing can beat the original. But it's actually a really nice nod. And finally, mastered by Ted Jensen.
Is Ted in your house right now? Is he paying you to say this?
Ted, get me a beer
right now. Yeah, I mean, well said. I think Death Angel, to be honest with you, have released some of their best stuff in the 2010s. Yeah, we know, of course, Ultraviolence and Frolic in the Park in Act 3, but then they just kind of died after that. And we know why, with the accident and everything. But they came back tighter, more mature, and like you said, faster, but heavier as well. I thought they got heavier. I think they're a lot heavier, actually, in the 2010s. If I had to pick a top 10 bands of the 2010s for hard rock or metal, Death Angel would absolutely be in that top 10.
And they're still brutal, and they don't take the breaks, or
no,
they still do what they did before. They'll mix some acoustic stuff in there. They don't care,
right?
But it doesn't diminish from the heavy album. It just gives you a nice little break, and I think it's more acceptable in 2010 than it was in the late 80s, early 90s. But a phenomenal album. I'm proud that this one's on the top 10 or top 20 for our list. I really like the album artwork too. You start to see the wolf pack is introduced. They nickname the head wolf there Woofy. So you start to see Woofy wolf pack, and that'll be a theme for 3 of the next 4 albums.
All right, that wraps up 2013. We don't have any records for 2014. I thought we did.
I do on my list. Do I have a wrong list? Do I have an older version? I've got Overkill Grinding Wheel.
Grinding Wheel came out in 2017, though, I think.
Oh.
Yeah, it did. White Devil Armory was in 2014.
So I've got the wrong title after it. You're right, because Grinding Wheel just happened.
So we do have 2014. Sorry, people.
But that was the Overkill, right?
Yep. So we, by mistake, had Overkill, the Grinding Wheel, for 2014. But as our audience knows, and we both know, that album actually came out in 2017. So the album that should have been on here was White Devil Armory. I'm making
there we go. That's right
now.
On the fly editing.
That's what we do. Vodcast. I mean, what can I say about Overkill? Talk about they're like the working man's band. Overkill has really never taken any time off, right? They're either in the studio making records, or they're out on tour supporting the records that they make. I mean, it seems like they have a new record every 2 years.
Massive catalog.
Yeah, it's great because they never change. White Devil Armory, it's Overkill, right? They've basically had the same sound since their inception, maybe gotten a little heavier, I think the thing that I noticed right off the bat when I first heard this record, White Devil, was the production. The production was it didn't sound like previous Overkill records, right? Overkill always, I thought, had thin production in some of their earlier records, but this kind of started a trend halfway through the 2010s of having better produced albums. And what it does, in my opinion, I think what having like super ultra produced albums does for metal bands is it makes them sound heavier. And with Overkill, I mean, the music's always been heavy. It's like, how can you get any heavier? But for some reason, for this record, it sounded heavier to me than what they had done before.
Or the guitars sounded a lot more bite to them.
A lot more, yeah.
Instead of just a wash of noise. It's hard to produce thrash, especially in the 80s. They didn't have the right equipment. They didn't know what they were doing yet. And as those kind of things start to get ironed out by the 2010s, it's all ironed out.
Right. Yeah, so Overkill, White Devil Armory. Moving on to 2015, we have Fear Factory with Genexus. Corey, I'll let you take this one too.
Yeah, so Fear Factory, they are, I don't know what's going on with them right now. I don't know if they're rumored to have split up, but there's a lawsuit going on, so that's kind of a bummer. They were supposed to have a new album to follow this one up, but I'm a big fan of this album. I do like Fear Factory, the industrial, the different kind of vocals, clean, they still have the clean and scream vocals, but Genexus, I don't know if it was the right time, if it was just timing or what, ended up being like the only album I had on my new cell phone, and I had to travel for work. And while I'm waiting to take off on the plane on the tarmac, you can't have any kind of internet or anything on. I just kept looping that album, and it just really delivered for me. It had a lot of different layers to it, connected with me emotionally. And I just love the lyrics and the theme. Dino does a great job on just nailing it. I know, it's not the original, it's not the 90s Fear Factory, but I think all the necessary parts are there. I think there's a lot of the tempo changes. I think they did do some organic acoustic. They did some live drum sounds on it, so it's not all electronic drumming on some of the tracks. So it gives it some texture as well. But Genexus is a really good album. And I think there's a series of good albums that Fear Factory had in the 2010s, and I think that one stands out for me.
Yeah, I would agree. I love Fear Factory. I know not everybody likes Fear Factory, but I think they're another one of those bands that's just gotten better as time's gone on. I do hope that they're able to work out their differences, because I'd love to have a new album from Fear Factory. This album in particular, obviously it keeps that industrial feel to it. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, I thought that Al Jorgensen from Ministry was either guested on this album or he did some production on this album.
I have to look that up. I'm not sure.
Let's see. Yeah, he did guest on the vinyl version. There's a couple remixed tracks. He did Mandatory Sacrifice. Al Jorgensen remixed and then provided the vocals on that.
Nice find on that.
So do you have this on wax? I've not been able to find this record.
Yep, I bought it when it came out.
Do you have the blue or the red one? I
didn't think it was blue or red. I thought it was gray.
Or maybe it is gray.
I have to pull it out, but I thought it was like a opaque gray.
It's like blue. Oh, here we go.
You know what? It may not have been the year it came out. It could have been the year after.
Oh, here it is. Yep.
It could have been 2016.
2015. Yep, it's gray.
So it was the new. Okay.
For some reason, I've always found that Fear Factory records difficult to find, and they're always ridiculously priced online.
So Gene Hoglan did the drums on one Energize. The name escapes me, but 2 or 3 albums before this. Cannot find that. I went and pulled it up on eBay because I was looking up for this, and found that somebody bought it for $25 just a month ago, and I missed it. And if you want a copy of that, you got to pay $70 to get it from like Australia.
Which one did you find?
Go back 3 albums. Not Energize.
Mechanize.
Mechanize. It's Mechanize, and Gene Hoglan's on drums on that one. But you can't find it on vinyl, and if you do, it's $70 with shipping. And someone just picked it up for $24.99 on eBay, and I missed it. Like, 'cause it's not like something you look for every month. And honestly, I don't know how to set eBay up to give me notifications on keywords. So I just always kind of have to continually kind of hunt for stuff when it's on my mind. So that's hit or miss. But that's all right. That's either here nor there. But yeah, Fear Factory, you can't find this stuff on vinyl. They need to reissue the Obsolete came out. What a fantastic reissue that is.
Yep.
But they need to redo all the Roadrunner.
We need Dehumanize.
Albums. Yeah.
We need it.
Yes.
Come on, music.
All right, what's next? Let's move it along.
All right, let's keep going. 2016,
Ooh.
We have Testament, Brotherhood of the Snake, and Megadeth, Dystopia. What can I say about two of the classic Bay Area thrash bands with obviously Testament and Megadeth? This is actually Megadeth's second record on here. Brotherhood of the Snake is just a phenomenal. That was my favorite record that year. Was Brotherhood of the Snake in 2016.
Oh yeah, for a lot of people. Mm-hmm.
And again, this is a common theme with a band like Testament. They've only gotten better as time's gone on. Heavier, better, tighter, and to have, basically the classic lineup, give or take a drummer. But to have, of course, the guitar duo of what's his name? Totally drawn.
Skolnick and
Alex Skolnick, and then Rob. Can't remember his last name, and then of course Chuck Billy. A phenomenal record, and definitely was my favorite record of 2016.
I thought it had a little bit of black metal elements to it. It sounded like, because it was darker, heavier.
Yeah,
it was definitely thrash, and I mean it's definitely in the confines of thrash. But this is just a blistering album. But it definitely had some dark it's definitely very dark. It was also the first time they came out on YouTube with those 360 like virtual reality pictures. So like when the lyric video started to come out, which I thought was genius. Why not just do a lyric video? Production's a lot cheaper, but it was a thing you could start doing that 360 degree images.
And I think Gene Hoglan was the drummer on this record as well.
Yep.
So, all right, next one, Megadeth, Dystopia. This was, until this record came out, my favorite Megadeth record of the new millennium, or of the 21st century, was 13 back in 2011. And then they came out with Dystopia. Of course, they had the drummer. He didn't actually tour with them, but he did the record from Lamb of God. And the guy's a phenomenal drummer. And then you put him in a band with Mustaine and Ellefson, and then a collection of the guys that he assembles for these bands, and you have the perfect recipe for another killer Megadeth record. This Brotherhood of the Snake just edged out for me. Just edged out Dystopia.
Interesting. And then it was highly anticipated and build up album, and it delivered. I know for Record Store Day, and I think Black Friday Record Store Day, you could get the Thread is Real 12-inch, and they were starting to leak stuff online, and the album finally dropped at like the beginning of the year. And I knew it was going to be like one of the top albums of the year right away. Everybody was excited about it. It had like the 90s, it had the 90s feel, but it was fresh, great production. It had the energy, the writing.
Vocals were great.
Much better, I think, better lyrics from Dave Mustaine. It wasn't another like Super Collider. I felt like he just kind of tripped over his own feet and fell. Going back and looking back at Super Collider now, it's not as bad, but it's definitely didn't set the bar. And now Dystopia is like, yes, Megadeth's back, and it had Vix on the cover, this dystopian cover, and it came with the CD came out with a virtual reality packaging.
That's right.
I picked that up, and you could I made like this box, put the box together, you stick your cell phone in it, and that was the first time I did virtual reality. And while there, you can select videos to play. And so I'm standing there in my living room, and my wife and kids are just all laughing at me.
They're like, "What are you doing?"
But just great packaging, and then the final release is good stuff. It's hopefully that they're rumored to have enough material now for a new album in 2020, possibly.
Yes,
Dave's supposed to be healing from his throat cancer, so I know they didn't do much on the Mega Cruise. I know he didn't go on that, but I think as soon as his voice heals up, we should have a new album by this year or next year for sure.
Yeah, let's hope so. And funny thing is this album was the first time that Megadeth or Dave won a Grammy, right, for Best Metal Performance.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, always the bridesmaid before that.
Yep, and he finally won a Grammy, and he was actually there to accept it. I heard an interview with him a couple days after he got it. So,
well, yeah, and they played, and to play the music for him on his way up to go grab
Master
his
of Puppets, right?
the house band played some Metallica. Like, oops. And he just laughed it off.
How ironic is that? It's like he just can't escape Metallica. They'll always be following him wherever he goes.
Yeah. I think they deal with it a lot better now than they did in the late 90s,
for
early
sure.
2000s. Oh my gosh. Let's not go there.
All right, that's 2016. 2017, we've got some new bands to enter the list. We have Power Trip, Nightmare Logic, Killer, modern day, new thrash band, Body Count, Bloodlust, and then Mastodon, Empire of Sand. Power Trip, Nightmare Logic. I mean, what can I say? That is just balls to the wall thrash. I mean, for the very first time I heard that record, I was immediately on board. And I did not go and get their first record that came out before this until after I heard this record.
Yep, same here. Power Trip. I don't know any of the guys' names yet, but I do know they're from Dallas. Absolute modern day torch bearers for thrash metal, and the energy's 100%. There. Like, I'm listening to it, and it's just like chaos, and they're just barely keeping the lid on it, just like you're supposed to. Soaring solos that almost seem like they're gonna just go completely off the page, and then it just comes back down into that bed of the drumming. I mean, it's phenomenal. It felt like it was 1989 again, and I think it did that for a lot of people. And the best part about it is they're younger and bringing in the new crowd to keep thrash going. Thrash has its limitations, but Power Trip, I don't see a lot of limitations there. They're also rumored to have a lot of material together for a new album, and possibly.
That's what I'm hearing. I sure hope so. Yeah, killer album, man. My favorite track from Nightmare Logic, it's an anthem, Executioner's Tax, Swing of the Axe.
Yes. What a great title name too.
Yeah, killer band. Body Count, Bloodlust.
Oh my God.
I'm a fan of Ice-T. I've always liked Ice-T, and I've always liked Body Count. And this record, basically just him. He doesn't have his longtime band. I think Ernie C was his guitar player. I don't think that guy joined him for this record, but talk about a heavy record. I could be wrong. You know what? I think that was for their album before that. Ernie
C, but I don't know who else. That's all when I think of Body Count, that's the only two I know anyway. Sorry, I didn't mean to mess with your flow.
No, you're fine. Let's pull that up. Maybe he is on here. So I'm apparently wrong. Yeah. So Ernie C is on here, but phenomenal album. When this album came out, man, talk about a heavy album. With Body Count, you don't realize how heavy they are. I mean, immediately, if you hadn't heard Body Count and you just knew Ice-T, you're like, oh, it's got to be some kind of rap metal. But it's almost, he's got a flow that he delivers, but it's almost like hardcore punk, right? Or spoken word hardcore. that type of delivery over thrash metal basically.
There's not much that could keep up with Ice and T and the body count. It is brutal. I play that and I almost have to like turn it down a little bit just because it's brutal. It's like Slayer. I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah, I think
I
they
would like to
do.
see these
They
guys
do
live.
a Slayer cover. They think they cover Raining Blood, their own version of it on this record.
I mean, the brutal power, the anger, the just everything packed in there. The one track on there, "No Lives Matter," is just
Yeah,
really brutal. I know
brutal.
Dave Mustaine does a guest appearance on one of the tracks. Also, Max Cavalera is a guest appearance on one of the
That's
tracks as
right.
well. So
Randy
he's teaming
Blythe
up.
from Lamb of God, I think, is on here.
But yeah, I do have that on vinyl. It's got an incredible cover too. I mean, that's what metal is supposed to be, and they just own it
Absolutely.
in their own way.
It's supposed to be dangerous, and body count this record feels dangerous to me.
That's a good way to put it.
And then Mastodon, Empire of Sand is our last one we have for 2017. I'm going to let you take this one. I did not care for this record. I'd probably need to go back and give it another listen, another 2 or 3 listens, but it didn't have the same feel as their previous records. It was, for lack of a better term, it almost felt like poppy to me, even though it's not.
I can definitely get that. They definitely shifted gears. They probably downshifted from overdrive down into third. But for more of a rock sound. But this is a top 20 rock and metal, so we don't, it's not overly metal.
Right.
But
right.
yeah, you think about their previous albums. But I loved Empire Sand. Twin guitar harmonies, melodies, great songwriting. The songs just really stand out. And not only is there like the first track or the second track good, it just keeps building and building. And I felt it was like that was one of the first times I listened to an album 3 times in a row. Like I grabbed my daughter like the second time through and like sit down here and listen to this, and she was blown away too. So I understand why some Mastodon fans are like, no, this is not right. But a lot of hardcore Mastodon fans are like Tool fans, where they can do no wrong. So a buddy of mine at work, he's no longer there now, but he's a huge Mastodon fan. He seen him. He's got a huge Mastodon tattoo, and he likes the album as well. So I got feedback from him, so it's all good. But I really do like the songwriting, and it's just one album, guys. It's their 2017. Yeah. It's Emperor Sand. It's that concept. It's how they put that together. And don't worry, do not fret. They'll come back with another Leviathan or Crack the Sky. They'll be back with that more brutal. They slow it down. It's not as brutal. It's not as much. More clean vocals. So I really enjoyed the album.
Yeah, I need to give it another listen. I already told myself I was going to do that. So, because as of right now, I tried, but it's been a long time. I mean, I bought the record the day it came out, and I listened to it probably for 2 weeks straight, off and on, and then that was it. It's like, this sucks. Going in the shelf.
It's more like Sacred Reich. Sacred Reich's new album is like that, where they're doing more of the straight up metal. Yeah. It's not thrash. It's more rock metal. It's more songwriting. It's slowed down a little bit. It's cleaner. But I don't think Mastodon's going to stay there. I just think that's what they want to do for the album.
Yeah, I completely agree. All right, that covers 2017, 2 more years. We've got 2018, which happens to be our biggest year as far as the amount of albums, and that's probably just because 2018 is so fresh still. This may change in 5 years, but for both of us now, at least for me, I still listen to these records all the time. So we've got Judas Priest, Firepower, The Mighty Fu Manchu, Clone of the Universe, Corrosion of Conformity, No Cross, No Crown, Sleep, The Sciences, and then Alice in Chains, Rainier Fog. What did you think of the first time you heard Firepower?
I thought Priest, this is awesome. I want to say Priest is back, but they really didn't leave. I felt like they came back for Angel of Retribution.
Yeah.
I really liked that album, but I thought that only had a few strong songs for me, Redeemer of Souls. But Firepower blew me away.
From beginning to
it was
end.
phenomenal.
Yep.
It was like, it's kind of a mix. I know people have said this, a mix of kind of Defenders, a little bit of Vengeance.
Yeah.
A little bit.
I see that.
A lot of people that try to knock the album say, oh, this is a Halford solo project just because his vocals are so out in front. But to me, I go back and listen to Painkiller, and I hear a lot of similarities. I'm like,
oh yeah.
Where were they then when Painkiller came out? Now, Painkiller is all time, some of their favorite album. But I really enjoy Firepower. The cover, it encapsulated Priest, and they just own it. They just own who they are instead of trying to change with the times or change their style. I mean, still you have the same kind of iconic cover. They're just I don't know what's the word. They do it with conviction, and they do it with such conviction. And it's great to see. I mean, of course, you're minus KK, but other than that, Faulkner's doing a great job, and their Battle Cry, their live Blu-ray. I mean, it's just amazing that they've been around for 50 years and still can deliver at this level. Is unbelievable. Rob's still hitting 90%.
Still the king. He's still the metal god. Yeah, I bought this the day it came out.
Christmas album.
Right. Yeah, I bought this record the day it came out, and I was blown away. I remember hearing the first single from that album. I think Eddie Trunk played it on his show, his Drunk Nation show that he has.
Yeah.
On Sirius XM. And when he played that, I was like, what? They're back. But like you said, they weren't really back. They never went anywhere. But yeah, phenomenal record. I thought it was vintage Judas Priest. Yeah. Okay, next one here. This is actually my favorite record of 2018. I know it's one of yours as well. I saw them on this tour. Actually, I saw them like 3 times on this tour, but that's Fu Manchu, Clone of the Universe. Talk about another band, kind of like Overkill. They're a working man's band, right? If they're not making, Fu Manchu's not making records, they're touring nonstop. That's what they do. And then I thought Clone of the Universe was their strongest album since not the super. What was the record before?
Giga? Was it
Gigantoid? Gigantoid.
Gigantoid.
The record before Gigantoid. I thought this was their best record, and it's definitely, I think it's one of their heavier records too. And then of course you got Alex Lifeson guesting on the whole second side of, if you buy the vinyl version, it's the whole song. And I actually got to talk to Bob Balch, the guitar player, about how that all came together. Their manager was friends with Rush's manager. And I guess literally it was like one day he's like, we're getting ready to, start work on a new record. We have the songs down. We're just getting ready to go into the studio. And his manager's like, oh yeah. He's like, Alex is a big fan of Fu Manchu. And they're like, what? Really? He's heard Fu Manchu? He's like, oh yeah, huge fan. He's like, he loves their stuff. And he kind of jokingly said, you should ask Alex if he wants to guest on a song on the record. And he goes, are you serious? And he's like, yeah. So he asked him, and he said, sure. So they did the songs. They did that song kind of, they had like the rhythm tracks basically, and they sent the song digitally to Alex, and then he recorded a bunch of stuff. I guess he did like 15 or 16 takes with different stuff, like different guitar parts on each one, and then sent it back and said, you can use them all, pick which one you like. You don't have to use any, type of thing. And then all came together. But I was
nice. You don't get that on Wikipedia, kids.
No. And when I asked Bob about it, I was expecting like he came to the studio, and he's like, no, didn't work that way. He's like, it was really just, man, we didn't even meet him. We sent him the stuff, he recorded it, and we picked the one we liked. I was like, wow.
That's really awesome. And I picked this up right away too. You know, as soon as it released, I think well, no, they released a song. Let's see, I wrote it down what it means here. The instrumental, the atomic something. I can't find my note. The Atomic Beast. But they released it. You could listen to it for free before the album even came out, like on Spotify.
That's
And
right.
I stopped everything and played it. And I was like, this is one of the best. I think this should go in the top 10 best instrumentals of all time. Mostly instrumentals because he's got the light, the throttle part in there. But
Yep.
it also encapsulates that energy and that everything that Fu Manchu is there. I think in the middle. But then it goes off on kind of like this, stoner rock kind of voyage. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
an incredible instrumental. And then picking out Alex license parts are always fun. At first, I was like, "Oh, yeah, that's got to be Alex." I think it's towards the end, right, where his parts are kind of
Yep.
the dreamy, long sustained notes parts. I think is Alex, but I'd like someone to point out exactly where he is or isn't playing, so I know for sure. But and then I just love us. It just takes up the whole side of the whole slab of vinyl, like you said, just like in the Vita.
Right. That's
It's just
exactly
all
what I
right there,
thought
but
about the
I
first
love
time I heard it. It's exactly Inagata
great
Vita.
instrumental, great album. And then side A is great songwriting and tracks. I think it's a really strong Fu Manchu album. It's also it's kind of undiscovered. I think it's underrated. I think that more people should know about it.
Yeah, I completely agree. And if you've never seen Fu Manchu, go see them. They're one of the best live hard rock / metal bands that you can see you can see in a club today. They're absolutely a phenomenal show. I saw them actually both times I saw them, or all 3 times I saw them here in Denver on that tour. Well, gosh, would have been May or June of 2018. I have to look at my ticket stubs. But super small, tightly packed, intimate club where there was literally you couldn't move around. Once you got to your spot, you're sitting in the spot, listening to Fu Manchu, and they're like right there. They got their fucking full stacks in the whole wall, just full stacks in this tiny little club, and you're right in front of it. It's like right at you. So go see Fu Manchu if you haven't seen him. All right, next up, Corrosion of Conformity. No Cross, No Crown. This was the kind of the return to arguably their classic lineup as well, with Pepper Keenan coming back into the band, taking over the lead vocal duties again. And I thought it was what a beautiful way to return. And this is another one of those records. I picked it up literally the day it came out. Super heavy, still has that kind of sludge New Orleans feel to it with Pepper in the band. It was almost like they picked back up where they left off with their 94 record with Deliverance, or even the record after that.
I picked up Deliverance on cassette tape.
That's right, you got the
it's
cassette
too expensive
tape.
on vinyl. But yeah, COC. Actually, I didn't know that they were going to be coming out with a new album. I really didn't know what was going on with them. I know they were still releasing albums. What with Pepper being, I thought he was playing with Down or whatever, doing some different things. But I was just like, oh, let's see what's up. Oh, I was kind of looking at what vinyl releases were coming out. And I'm like, oh, let's see what COC's up to. And I'll pick up their new album. It looks pretty cool. I think I grabbed it off pre-ordered it off of Nuclear Blast, and it showed up, and I loved it. I was like,
Yeah.
this is really good. that was a no-brainer to get on the list.
Absolutely.
I highly recommend that album.
Next one on the list is an odd one because it just appeared one day in a record store, and that's Sleep, The Sciences. So Sleep hadn't had a record come out since 2003, since Dope Smoker, which is, I sent you that, I think.
Yes, thank
and
you.
We just kind of thought Sleep, Matt Pike, the kind of the brainchild of Sleep, was just gonna continue doing his stuff with High on Fire, and maybe we'll see a Sleep reunion. Maybe they'll tour for a summer. And literally, I walked into the store and I see new releases, and I see Sleep with the Space Man in front. I'm like, it's like a compilation. So I asked my buddy at the record store. He's like, no, it's their new record, just dropped today. I'm like, "What do you mean new record?" I go, "What are you talking about? I don't have a new record." He's like, "Oh yeah, blah blah blah." It's like nobody knew about it. It's like literally we found out like 2 days ago that we were getting something from Sleep. And then it showed up, brand new record produced by Jack White, done on Third Man Records, actually.
Yeah, it was the timing there with Record Store Day. I had to look that up to see what that fell on, because I thought it released on 420. Of course, the theme with the astronaut and the suit and the buds and the buds on the cover there. But I thought it released on Black Friday Record Store Day, and from what I got from the dealers was that there was this release and Third Man Records for Record Store Day, while the dealers were looking online what to buy and going to Third Man Records. Third Man Records had this release, and they weren't going to tell you what it was. It was a mystery release, and you can buy them up for Records Today, or you couldn't. And some record stores were like, "I'm not taking a chance because it could be some off the wall new collaborative artist that Jack White is working with, blah blah blah." So then some record stores went ahead and just got 5, got 2, and then when it showed up, it was this new Sleep album. And then so the record stores that did that, they turned those over really quickly because everybody was trying to hunt that down that day once it hit the social media. And then I think most stores were completely sold out. I had to wait from that. That was my connection. I think my connection bugged out, but yeah, let's power through and wrap up.
You're back. I didn't catch that, but I'm sure the recording did. So, Sleep, the Sciences, great album. It was a mystery. I can't believe it just appeared one day, but yeah, I happened to buy it the day I saw it in the store, and there was only like 3 of them. So, last one on here is Alice in Chains, Rainier Fog. It was Alice in Chains' first new record since 2013. It's Devil Put Dinosaurs Here. And this record was super important to the Alice guys, especially Jerry Cantrell and Sean Kinney, because this was the first album that they recorded back in Seattle since the Tripod record at what was once called Bad Animal Studio. So he just felt like, in the interviews I've heard with Chris Cornell's passing, that kind of hit him really hard that the year before. So he's like, I want to go back to where it all started and pay tribute to the reason that I have a career today. So, and you can hear it in the songwriting. It's definitely a more polished Alice record, but and I've said this multiple times, I don't think Alice in Chains has made a bad record. They've got several great records and a bunch of really good records. And I thought Rainier Fog was same type of deal.
Yeah, excellent album. I need to go back. I definitely need to get that on vinyl. I remember listening to it and thinking it was pretty good. It's a really good promotion around it. Definitely has that desolate, lost, gloomy feel to it.
Yeah.
But lots of layers, big beefy guitars. It's all there. It's all there. It's a great rock album.
Yeah, it really is. All right, that wraps up 2018. We got one more, and then our honorable mentions, but 2019 we only have one. And we got a record from Tool. Amazing. Tool, Fear Inoculum. We had been waiting for this record for how long? 15 years?
Well, I think just about as long as we waited for Chinese Democracy.
Right, but we were not disappointed. At least I was not disappointed I was with Chinese Democracy.
That's right. Complete opposite effect there. Yeah, I think it was, I don't know if they were going for 5,000 days or what. Yeah, it was quite a while. Was it like 12 years, 13 years?
Yeah, something like that. And it was quite an event that led up to this, because a few months before the album came out, they made all their stuff available on streaming services and iTunes for the very first time, and then we had a new record. So I wish Tool would release this on vinyl, because I'd rather listen to it on vinyl than play my little CD.
Right.
But I guess that's what I have to do for now.
So when I think about what to do for 2019, you know, my list was really long. There's a lot of great stuff, and there's also a lot of new bands I was sampling.
Yep.
A lot of metal from around the world, Scottish metal bands, bands coming out of Europe, UK. But and when I came to Tool, it's like, oh, okay. All Tool has to do is make an album, and then boom, it's going to be on your top 20 because it's Tool. So that could be, you know, that's an attitude that I, you know, that people might think you have. I was
Right.
like, well. So I was like, I almost didn't put it on there at all. I was like, okay, well, people just think I put it on there because it's Tool, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, no, let's think about it. Let's listen to this
It's
again.
really
Let's
that
hold
good.
it up. Let's hold it up to what, you know, what else is out there. And I think it's just a phenomenal album. The musicianship is incredible. It goes without saying. I can't add anything to it that hasn't.
Right.
But
It's a Tool
drums are
record.
fantastic. I think Descending is my favorite song. I really like Fear Inoculum. I like Tempest, but lately I've been in the Descending. But when this came out, I got the day off work. This will tell you how nuts I am. I got the day off work, had purchased it, went around to a couple different record shops, found it, got a copy in my hand, went home, opened it, and listened to it all the way through with no interruptions. Had a glass of iced tea and just spaced out. It was an awesome experience. It's exactly what an album's supposed to be. The anticipation, the delivery. I wanted more Angry Maynard. I wanted more of that. So I thought it was maybe more of a little bit more Perfect Circle kind of Maynard in there, but still delivered. It did exactly what it's supposed to do. And I think it's like my top pick for 2019.
Yeah, I would say it's definitely my top 3 pick for sure. Yeah, nothing really left to add to that. It's a Tool record. It's a great record. Glad we finally got them back with some new stuff. So that's the top 20. Real quick before we sign off, we'll go through our honorable mentions. And I'll just go through mine, and then if you want to read yours.
Sure.
So I went starting in 2010, excuse me, Electric Wizard, Black Masses, Electric Wizard, you know, pretty killer doom / stoner metal band. Out basically, they actually come from Black Sabbath's hometown of Birmingham in the UK.
I got that connection.
Yeah, and they're, gosh, talk about wall of sound heavy. You want just massive sludge fuzz in your face. Listen to that. Listen to Electric Wizard. But 2013, I have Alice in Chains, Devil Put Dinosaurs Here. Love that album. It's that album is packed full of Cantrell riffs. 2015, I have Slayer, Repentless. This was basically Slayer's last studio album, and probably forever. And I loved it. I actually saw him on this tour. And then I also have Sun, the kind of drone metal band Sun with Cannon that came out. Sun is not for everybody. I understand it's an acquired listen. You need to have a lot of time to listen to them. And I recommend if you do listen to a Sun record, to do nothing else but listen to, because it's super thick, dense music that takes a while to penetrate. And then my last one from 2019 is a band out of Denver, Colorado, called Blood Incantation: The Hidden History of the Human Race. So the guitar player and singer for this band is a friend of mine. He actually used to work at my basically local record store in Arvada, Black and Red, Paul. And he's, Blood Incantation had been basically they were a Denver heavy metal, death metal band. And they were fairly well known in the underground. They were famous for putting out EPs. And then they have one previous record that didn't really do anything. They were signed to an independent label, and then they dropped Hidden History of the Human Race. And it is, if you haven't heard this, Corey, you can listen to it on, I think you can listen to it on Spotify if you have like streaming services. But it's a death metal record, but it's not traditional death metal. It sounds like old school death metal for sure, but it doesn't deal with the same topics, right? They completely went against what most death, especially traditional death metal is, right? Death metal is the themes of, of course, death, Satanism, gore, that kind of stuff. This isn't that at all. It's basically a sci-fi record. And even the album cover itself, you look at the album cover and it doesn't look like a death metal record with the picture of the alien on the front. So if you're into sci-fi, that whole thing, and my buddy Paul, huge sci-fi nerd, he's not a, gore worshiping Satanist like, you want your death metal guys to be.
Like many others.
Right. But yeah, Blood Incantation, Hidden History of the Human Race. And they're actually, this album has been the buzz. I saw them, they were reviewed on Metal Injection reviewed them. I think they put that in like their top 5 records of 2019. I think even the indie website that does mostly independent, like
what, Pitchfork?
Pitchfork, thank you. Pitchfork did a review on this, and so they're kind of like the new darlings of the death metal scene, just because they're a new band. So, but
I'll definitely check them out.
Check them out, man. I really think you'll dig it. And that wraps up my 5.
All right, nice picks. And I do like to add a few that you feel like you may have left out. I just real quickly, I'll go through the list. Freedom Hawk, they're a stoner rock band, but they filter out a lot of the psychedelic, or a lot of the stoner. It's more straight up rock and roll. Freedom Hawk sounds a little bit like an Ozzy, like the vocalist sounds like Ozzy, but it's not. Once you start listening to them for more than 15 minutes, that disappears. Killer album, Into Your Mind. Power Mad Infinite. So thrash metalers from 1990 released Absolute Power. It was kind of an EP, or they had an EP in the late 80s, and then they had Absolute Power in 90, and then you didn't hear from them again. All of a sudden in 2015, here's this Infinite, and it's a killer thrash album, but they just got swept away in the wash of all the bands. Right. But check that out. You can get it for $20, Metal Church and Prong both had releases in 2016 that I really like. The Metal Church 11, I really like that album. I think you got Mike Howe coming back. They've got the song Reset. I mean, just the songs are very memorable. This was a lot like going back and listening to the Soundgarden. And oh my gosh, I played this a whole lot in 2016. I got to go back and revisit it. Great songwriting. I think it's better than their new album that's out. And then also Prong with their release. And then I made some notes here about Death Angel, but I crossed that off and I talked about it earlier. But I think that's about 5, right? Clutch Psychic Warfare was another one I really liked. So I think there's so many I could go on and on. But
I know a lot of these albums, like especially the last 5 years. They're not just these ones, but ones that didn't make our list are still so fresh in my mind that obviously in 5 years, this is going to be different. But yeah, great choices. I agree with you on Metal Church. That record was phenomenal. I remember when it came out, I didn't really think, my headspace just wasn't in Metal Church in 2016. So I saw it came out, I was like, oh, cool. They're still making records. And then I saw, Scott Waters reviewed it, and I'm like, and he raved about it. He said, they're back, Metal Church, this is their best album in a long time. So I immediately the next day went out and picked up the record and then threw it on the turntable, and it didn't leave the turntable for months and months. So
yeah, same here.
Phenomenal record. And that wraps it up.
Yeah, that's all I got. Let's see, which way is my camera pointing here? There's Power Trips, Nightmare.
Oh yeah, how did I miss that?
Because I've been sitting in front of it. I guess it didn't come through on the camera too well.
Shoot, I forgot to put an album out.
You didn't represent? Come on.
What kind of a host am I of a metal program? All right, well, that wraps up episode 8 to our top 20, exhaustive top 20 list for the last 4 decades. So yeah. It's a lot of fun undertaking this. It took a lot of time, but it was a lot of fun just putting the list together and listening to all these albums again. Some of them some of them for the first time, and some of them for the first time in a long time. So, yeah, I'm sure you felt the same way.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to get put the list together, work on that with you, and then go back and re-listen and revisit. Brush up on things like who mastered what, like Ted Jensen.
Ted Jensen.
I'm getting the Ted Jensen T-shirt by the time we meet again. But that was a lot of fun to dive down in there and refresh on that. Maybe we'll win a trivia quiz game somewhere. But yeah, I look forward to doing some more episodes. We just got to figure out what we want to talk about next. And yeah, thanks for having me on again. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, you bet. No problem. I think you can expect at some point, whether it's the next episode or not, but I think we want to do, we kind of like this theme of lists, but I think we kind of want to go back even further, right, to a decade that we haven't touched on, maybe do it a little differently. I don't know if we're going to do review albums like we did here, but, and this was your idea, Corey. I thought it was a great idea to go through the 1970s and come up with two separate lists. Who are the absolute legendary bands? What did we say? 20 legendary bands who came out, but also
we could 10 or 20, yeah.
20 kind of off the beaten path, under the radar bands as well that people forgot about, but are no less great than some of the well-known bands. So yeah, I don't know if it's gonna be the next episode, but it will be one of our next few episodes, I would imagine.
So come back again, y'all.
Ted Jensen will be here, and Corey will be conducting an interview. All right. John signing off. Corey.
Later. Stay metal.
Peace.